Hello, aspirants. Hope all of you are doing good. So, as promised, today we have come up with the next lecture of the series, which we have started for 60 days in order to cover up the syllabus for CSC prelims examination. So, this lecture has been brought to you by Himalai IAS classes, and let's get started today. And today we are going to discuss how to prepare history for this UPSC Civil Services exam. If you want to understand what is the Civil Services exam, what is the different stages of the exams or the trends of the exam, then you can refer to the previous video in the same series which we have prepared. So moving ahead. So as we saw, this is the same slide which we have used in the introduction video, that the trend analysis shows us that history gives us around 15 questions every year. So this 15 question, it includes both art and culture as well as modern Indian history. So in today's session, we are going to see what are the resources and how we should prepare art and culture and modern history for civil services exam. So art and culture, on an average, there will be 5 to 10 questions which will be asked from this topic. Okay. Why, first of all, art and culture we should know. See, art and culture actually it represents our collective consciousness as a society, as a country. It is our collective expression, and it tells us what is our journey, how it has been. Okay, so that's why it has been a part of syllabus as an administrator. So in the introductory session, we discussed that the persons who will be recruited through this examination, they are the one, actually they are the decision makers for our society in the most simplest sense. So that's why the people who are the decision maker of a society, they must have an idea about the art and culture, about the expression, about the collective consciousness of that society. So that's why this is a part of syllabus, and usually there are 5 to 10 questions which are asked on this paper. As we have seen, the number of questions is not fixed. It might vary. There might be a year when there might not be even, let's say, 1 or 2 questions only. There might be a year where UPSC will ask, let's say, 10 questions from art and culture itself. That's why leaving it out, it's not a good option. So let us look at the resources which we can refer to for preparing art and culture. First of all, we can go to this culture resource website, which is under the Ministry of Culture. And this is the link which I have provided, the ccrtindia.gov.in. Another resource which you can refer to is the Fine Arts NCRT of class 11th. And there are 2 NCRT textbooks of Ancient India and Medieval History in class 12th. So you can go for this one, or else you can go ahead and get a textbook which is very popular among the UPSC aspirants. It is Indian Art and Culture by Nitin Singhania. Again, guys, I strictly advise you to use all of these resources. We just have 60 days, so it's not that we are going to do just art and culture for entire 2 months of time. So please select any one of it. It can be either the website of CCRT, or you can go for the NCRTs, or you can go for the Indian Art and Culture by Nitin Singhania. But please do not go for the multiple resources in the beginning. Any one of it with which you are familiar and you are comfortable with, you can go ahead. So please select any one resource for art and culture, and we have to do multiple readings of the same resource. Remember this, I discussed in the introductory session also. This is going to be very, very important. Multiple reading of the same resource. Okay, moving ahead, modern history. Again, in the modern history, we will be finding somewhere around 5 to 10 questions. And what are the resources here? So resources for modern history are going to be a brief history of modern India by Spectrum and history NCRT books. Okay. So if here I'll tell you about two situations. If some of you are just going to get started now for preparing this exam, then I would ask you to go through with a brief history of modern India by Spectrum. If some of you have already done the brief history of modern India by Spectrum, or if you have done the NCRT history, then you can mix and match the both. Because history is one such thing where Spectrum covers most parts of it, but still NCRT has some very beautiful concepts and it has a lot of nitty gritty details, which a lot many times we have seen directly appearing on the paper. Okay. So the resources for modern Indian history is going to be a brief history of modern India by Spectrum and history of NCRT. See, there are a lot of other books. I'm not saying that all the other books are bad, but this is the resource which we have found it's most concised and it is very useful from a lot of point of views. Okay. So this was all about the resources which we are going to stick to for our preparation of art and culture and modern Indian history. Now in the upcoming slides, I have given some information about the topics which you will be reading. So this will give you a fundamental background about the subject itself. So for art and culture, we have to prepare art and culture from ancient to modern times. Okay. So the time in the sense of history is divided into three phases. One is known as prehistorical times, another one is known as historical times, and there's one in between which is known as proto-historical. Okay, the difference between all these three is prehistorical times are those times when art of writing was not developed. Okay, so prehistorical is something when art of writing was not known. Okay, proto-historical is such times when art of writing was known, but we are not able to decipher it yet. So for example, the time in India before Harappan civilization, it belongs to prehistorical time, which is Stone Age or Chalcolithic Age, where there was no art of writing, which was developed and we haven't found it yet. Proto-historical times, the best example would be Harappan civilization, where the art of writing was developed. We have found the evidence of pictographic scripts. And please tell me in the comment section that which place we have found the evidence of pictographic script in Harappan civilization, but we are not able to decipher it yet. That's why it comes under proto-historical times. And then comes the historical times when the art of writing was developed and we are able to understand it also. Okay. So in historical times, we have art of writing as well as an understanding of that writing. So during the prehistorical times in India, in the art and culture section, there are some cave paintings and burial practices which were prevalent in the Indian subcontinent. So basically Bhimbetka cave paintings, some burial practices in the Ahmedabad or in the megalithic structures that we have to be aware of. During the proto-historical time and the Harappan civilization, the architecture of Harappan, they were having a nice urban planning system. The Harappan sculpture, which we have seen, let it be a bronze dancing girl or a bearded priest. Please, again, you can tell me in the comment section where these things have been found, or the pottery of Harappa. When it comes to the historical times and the ancient times, there is Vedic civilization. We don't have too much of architecture which remains till date from the Vedic civilization. You might wonder why we have architecture of Harappan civilization till date, but not of the Vedic civilization. Reason being, the Harappan civilization's architecture, they used the baked bricks, and that's why they survived till this date. Whereas the Vedic civilization They utilized the mud brick structure, and that we don't have the remains of which till today. Then the literature of the Vedic times. This is one of the most important things. The Vedic literature, the literature of Vedic tradition, 4 Vedas, which were written during these times. The pottery of ancient times or during the Vedic civilization. Then in the South India, we must know about the Sangam literature, which developed the epic of Sangam literature, as well as the poems which were written. Then during the age of Mahajanpadas, the two religious themes which became very dominant in the later period of time, Buddhism and Jainism. That is again very important for us. Coming next is Mauryan times, during which Mauryas were the first pan-India empire which developed in India. Actually, you can see from this chronology itself that once you have age of Mahajanpadas, once you have coming up of cities, then by using those cities only as a base, we can have a pan-India empire which developed during the time of Mauryas. So the basic things related to art and culture of that time, which we have to study as part of the syllabus, is the development of stupas, the cave architecture, which developed, the sculpture during Mauryan times, the pottery, northern black polished ware, one of the finest specimen of the pottery during Maurya's time. Then during the post-Mauryan times, we have development of Gandhara School of Art, Mathura School of Art, Amravati School of Art. All three belong to the sculpture art, and we have to understand the differences, the comparison, their salient features. Coming next is the time of Guptas, which are very famous for their gold coins, the numismatic art during the time of Gupta. The cave paintings, the construction of cave as it started under the Mauryans, the paintings on the wall of caves, it started during the Guptas. We have the example of beautiful cave paintings of Ajanta, Ellora. Then the temple architecture, again, it started in India under the time of Guptas. So again, this is another topic which is very important when it comes to the art and culture in ancient India. Moving ahead, then during the medieval and modern period, so as we know that there was advent of Islam into India during the medieval period, and the people brought too many new things in all the different walks of life when they came. So that new things led to the development of new style of architecture, which consisted the features of both Indian traditional architectural features and Persian architecture, and which was known as Indo-Islamic architecture. So the details of that, what beautiful monuments, cities, forts, they were developed during that time. Then Indian music, which developed. There are two main sub-branches under this. Hindustani school of music, which has the elements from outside as well as the traditional Indian musical elements, and there is a lot of scope of improvisation in the Hindustani school. And another school, which is Carnatic school of music, where the traditional Indian style of music still survives, and there is no scope of improvisation in the Carnatic school of music. Then comes the classical dances, which developed. So there are total 8 classical dances in India, which states do they belong to, what is their theme, what are the different features of each of these dances. That's all we have to know under this. Then the temple architecture in South India, which started under the regime of Pallavas, and it reached its zenith during the Chola Empire's regime. Later on, different regional variants also developed during this in the temple architecture of South India. Let it be Hoysala style or Nayaka style or Vijayanagara style. One important topic which we must know during the medieval period is the Chola sculpture, where they developed a beautiful Nataraja images, bronze sculpture, which became very famous and which still is a beautiful example of Indian art during those times. Then in the modern time, advent of Europeans again brought some modern elements into the Indian architecture. Take, for example, the building of Supreme Court, the entire New Delhi, the new cities of Bombay, Calcutta, which came up. So whatever new elements were brought by the Europeans, they again got mixed up with the Indian architectural style, and gave way to new architectural practices. That's what we need to know under this. Moving ahead. So guys, this was a rough idea for you that what will be the topics which you have to cover as part of art and culture. Then there are some separate topics which we must be knowing. So you can use the website of CCRT or the books which I have mentioned you. In NCRT, you will not find it. So the guys who are referring to NCRT for preparation of art and culture, they can use Google itself as a resource for making a list of these things. The list of tangible and intangible list of World Heritage Site of UNESCO, the folk dances in India of different states, folk music, martial arts with what different name they are known across the India, folk paintings of India, folk theatre, and again state-wise their name, famous temples in India, festivals and fairs. So basically, we must be aware India is a very diverse country, and we must be knowing what are the different names of different form of cultural practices or art forms across India in different states. So this list with the resources and the topics which we have discussed earlier, this covers your static portion of art and culture. Now let's move ahead and let's look at some topics which we have to prepare for modern history. Again, we have to use just two resources. One is the Modern India by Spectrum plus NCRT, which can be supplemented by it. If you are running short of time, then just stick to Modern India by Spectrum. That will suffice your preparation. So first and foremost will be the fall of Mughal Empire. What were the reasons which led to the fall of Mughal Empire? What was the consequences of it? The rise of regional states of India, the powers of Maratha, the state of Mysore, the state of Hyderabad, or state of Awadh, or the Bengal, or the Punjab under Maharaja Ranjit Singh. So the causes of decline plus a rise of new Indian states. Then next, advent of Europeans. What were the causes and what became the consequences? Who all came? Like Portuguese, Danish, French, Britishers, and who among them became victorious? And what were the reasons why Britishers ultimately became the master of Indian subcontinent? The next, we have to understand what were the reasons, cause, methods by using which Britishers were able to expand their empire and how they consolidated their rule over Indian subcontinent. Then there's a time of company rule starting from after 1757 until 1857. And what were the major developments, how they extended their rules. So there's a series of different acts which were allowed. There were different strategies, different doctrines or policies utilized by various governor generals of the company for the expansion of company. Then the peasant and tribal revolts during this time. So every action is always going to have some sort of reaction. So when British, they expanded their rule in India, they came in direct contact with a lot of Indian people and its population, and which in a lot of ways, they impacted their lifestyles, which again came back in form of reaction of peasant and tribal revolts. So the causes and consequences. Also, it's very important to remember the leaders of the revolts and the place where it happened. A lot of time the questions are asked from these areas. Then again, the revolt of 1857, one of the very famous event in modern Indian history, which has been analyzed from different perspective by a lot of different authors, but you must be aware about the cause, consequence, and the leaders of the revolt at different places. This makes a very common theme of the questions across the papers. Moving ahead. Indian freedom struggle. So this brings us to the next part, where in India first, with the coming up of modern education system and the spirit of reform which came around with the modern education system, plus the new values which developed not just in India but across the world itself: rationality, individualism, spirit of democracy, humanism, which led to the evolution of social reform movement in India. So across India, what were the different type of social reforms? what was their focus, what was different social problems which were prevalent in India during that time, who were the leaders, what were the organizations. This is a very important topic. Every year you can expect 1 or 2 questions from this area. Then rise of nationalistic feelings in India. So you have earlier political association of Indians, let it be Landholder Society or British Indian Association, followed by ultimately formation of Congress. Then the Congress phase is divided into early phase as moderate phase, where you have leaders like Dadabhai Naoroji, Firoz Shah Mehta, and some earlier challenges which can be faced by any organization which was created during that time, and how they countered those challenges, what were their strategies, what was their thinking, what was their drawbacks as well. That's all we need to understand as a part of moderate phase. During the moderate phase of the Congress, the anti-partition movement or the famous Swadeshi movement got started, and then later it went into the extremist phase, followed by the split between both the factions of the Congress. So this is again very important topic, and you can expect some questions from this area. The next important topic which we must be ready with is the First World War and Indian response. So Gadar on the foreign soil and Home Rule League movement on Indian soil by Tilak and Annie Besant were the two responses from India towards the First World War. So how both the events happened, what was their achievement, and what were the consequences. That all we need to study under this topic. And next comes with the arrival of Gandhi, the Gandhian phase of the Indian national movement. Again, very, very important topic. Again, every time there will be some questions from this area. Just for your assessment or for your interest, please tell me in the comment section, what is it that Gandhi brings totally new, which was in the Indian national movement? Okay. Then next topic is militant nationalism. That's the term which has been used across in all the books, and that's why I've used it. So it is nothing but people who were not able to channelize their energy through some constitutional means, and they had to use it in implementation of their thoughts. And that's where they didn't refrain themselves from even using the violent method against the British colonial empire. So people like Anushilan Samiti, Yugantar Group in the beginning, or Lal Bal Pal in the moderate phase of the Congress, and then HSRA, Bhagat Singh, Chandrasekhar Azad, or the Surya Sen, which is famously known as Master Da from Bengal. So all these people, so actually you'll find a pattern, then all these people were part of the national movement in the beginning. Because of some reason, whenever this movement got interrupted, then they became furious, like they were so charged up, they wanted to do something. And that's where, when they couldn't find a leadership, they decided to go on their own. And actually their contribution is again very significant, as same as the Congress during this national movement. So that's another topic which we have to prepare for Indian national movement or freedom struggle. Some other aspects from where questions have been asked in the previous year, which we must prepare for modern Indian history, is the contribution of various sections of Indian society. Let it be women of India, or let it be people from South India, people from Northeast, people from North India, Northwestern frontier. Growth of education during the Britishers. The rise of socialism, it was a very big event, and you can still find the pattern of socialism in the Indian society, how it has shaped our thinking, how this reflects even in our Constitution of India. Contribution of working class to Indian national movement, and consolidation of Indian states once we got the independence. Okay, so these are the very, very important topic. We have discussed the resources, and we have discussed a little glimpse of the topics which are most important for the subject of modern history. Again, this is the same thing as we have discussed, the do's and don'ts. Please go through this again and stick to the best practices. I thank you all for a lot to join us, and stay tuned. We'll be coming up with series of lectures again and again as discussed, and we'll try to cover up the whole syllabus in next 59 days starting today. Thanks a lot. Thank you for joining.